Welcome back to my channel, everyone. In this video, we're going to cover a fact sheet that answers common queries about the new model of assessment for internationally qualified nurses and midwives applying for registration in Australia. Transition to a new assessment model for internationally qualified nurses and midwives. The Nursing Board regulates the practice of nursing and midwifery in Australia, and one of its key roles is to protect the public. The Nursing Board does this by developing standards, codes, and guidelines, which together establish the requirements for the professional and safe practice of nurses and midwives. As part of its public protection role, the Nursing Board, in partnership with APRA, is responsible for assessing registration applications from internationally qualified nurses to ensure they are suitably trained and qualified for registration. Transition to a new model of assessment for internationally qualified nurses and midwives. The Nursing Board has moved to a permanent approach in the assessment of overseas nurses. Changes under the new model include a reduction in the assessment criteria from 8 to 3, which took effect in January 2019. This change streamlines the assessment process. However, the outcomes from assessments remain the same as under the previous 8 criteria. In March 2020, the Nursing Board transitioned to an outcome-based assessment for overseas nurses who hold a qualification that is relevant but not substantially equivalent or based on similar competencies to an Australian approved qualification. However, these nurses do meet the mandatory registration standards. This therefore replaces the need for new referrals to bridging programs. The Nursing Board undertook an extensive research project to explore the factors and requirements to establish an outcome-based assessment, which made recommendations that the overall assessment process includes both a cognitive and behavioral component. The cognitive assessment must be passed before the behavioral component is attempted, and an orientation program is established to orientate nurses and midwives to working in the Australian healthcare context. Simply put, you have to sit or undertake an overall assessment first, a cognitive one, where you must pass before you do the second step, which is the behavioral component. And once you pass that, you will go ahead and participate or enter the orientation program to ensure that you are well orientated in the Australian healthcare context. So what are the common questions? Question number 1. What is the new model of assessment for internationally qualified nurses? The new model of assessment includes an online self-check for all overseas nurses, an orientation program for all overseas nurses who are advised to continue with the assessment process, and an outcome-based assessment for some, not all, some overseas nurses. What does the self-check entail? The assessment of qualification continues to be against 3 criteria. All overseas nurses need to submit their qualification information at self-check. You will then be advised of the steps or assessment stages that you must successfully complete before being eligible to apply for registration. After your self-check, you are assessed as holding a qualification that is substantially equivalent or based on similar competencies to an Australian approved qualification, and that you can demonstrate you meet the mandatory registration standards. You will therefore be eligible to apply for registration following completion of Orientation Part 1. Then you will progress in the process as Stream A candidate. If you're an overseas nurse who is assessed as holding a qualification that is relevant but not substantially equivalent or based on similar competencies to an Australian approved application, and you can demonstrate that you meet mandatory registration standards, you will be required to successfully complete an outcome-based assessment prior to being eligible to apply for registration. In this stage, you will progress to the process as Stream B candidate. As an overseas nurse that does not hold a relevant qualification or does not meet the required assessment criteria, you will need to upgrade your qualification in Australia before being eligible to apply for registration. Your qualification can be upgraded in Australia through completion of a Nursing and Midwifery Board approved program of study or any other country of choice providing the qualification that meets the qualification assessment criteria. For this stage, you will progress to Stream C. So as you have seen here, under the self-check criteria, there are 3 categories. So Category 1, you do qualify and you have proved that you qualify and you have passed. You therefore go to Stream A. Category 2, you have a qualification, but it does not meet the Australian standards, but you have passed the outcome-based assessment. You will go to Stream B. And Category 3, you do not have any qualification and you therefore have to upgrade either in Australia or in your country of choice that meets the qualification assessment criteria. You will be classed Stream C. Let's see what's in the orientation program. All overseas nurses who are advised to proceed in the internationally qualified nurses and midwives assessment process will need to complete the orientation program in order to be registered in Australia. So you still need to be registered. There is no escaping it. You must be registered. If you proceed to the next stage, you must go through the registration process. Another commonly asked question is, does the self-check cover applicants from New Zealand under the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Agreement Act? Yes. The self-check provides advice for applicants from New Zealand who are eligible under the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act. Another common question, do all overseas nurses still need to meet the Nursing Board's mandatory registration standards? Yes. all overseas nurses will need to provide evidence of meeting the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia mandatory registration standards. What are the fees for overseas nurses? There is no fees to use the self-check. After you complete the self-check, you are assessed as eligible for registration or referred to the outcome-based assessment. You will need to pay a non-refundable assessment fee of 640 Australian dollars. This fee, it contributes towards APRA's costs in checking your documentation provided at self-check and for you to undertake the orientation program once you have passed your assessment. Overseas nurses who are referred to the outcome-based assessment will need to pay a specific outcome-based assessment fee as outlined below. So if you're from overseas and are eligible for registration and you meet the mandatory registration standards, you will need to pay a registration fee and application fee in order to be registered. The current application fee is 300 Australian dollars and the registration fee is $175. So in total, you will be paying 475 Australian dollars for both your registration and your application. Another common question is, what is the outcome-based assessment? This is a two-stage assessment process. One is a multiple choice question exam and an objective structures clinical exam. Overseas nurses must pass the first stage before moving to the next. So you must pass the multiple choice exam before moving to the objective structured clinical exam. To break it down further, stage 1 is a cognitive assessment, which is a computer-based multiple choice question exam. You must pass this exam to move to part 2 of the outcome-based assessment. In part 2, you will undertake the behavioral assessment in the form of an objective structured clinical exam. This has been developed to assess that you demonstrate the knowledge, skills, and competence of a graduate level nurse or midwife in Australia. Another common question is, who is the outcome-based assessment for? This assessment process is for overseas nurses who wish to register in Australia and have been assessed as holding relevant but not substantially equivalent qualifications. These nurses do demonstrate that they meet the mandatory registration standards. Another question, if I get a referral to the outcome-based assessment, when will I be able to start the process and how long will it take to complete? For an overseas nurse with a referral to the outcome-based assessment, you will be able to begin the process as soon as possible. So once you have received the referral, it means you can continue to the next stage. So if you have passed the outcome-based assessment, you must pass each assessment stage before undertaking the next. The time taken to complete the outcome-based assessment is dependent on how quickly you can progress through this assessment. So Make sure you don't take breaks or delay in between. Just prepare for your exam, go from one assessment stage to the next, and you'll be through without even realizing it. Question 8. What if I already have a referral to a bridging course, but I want to do the outcome-based assessment instead? If you're an overseas nurse and you hold a current referral to a bridging program, you can contact the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency to request a referral to the outcome-based instead. So there is an option. You can request to have the outcome-based assessment instead of going through the bridging program. In this case, you should contact the registration officer named in your referral letter. So have a look at the referral letter to your bridging program. There is a registration officer named in that as a point of contact. Communicate with that person and tell them you want to go through the outcome-based assessment instead of the bridging program. Question 8. What if I have already started a bridging course? If you have already started a bridging course, you should continue to complete the program. Question 10. How much are the fees for the outcome-based assessment and where can I sit the exam? The multiple choice exam is computer-based or online and is delivered at dedicated centers. There will be separate exams for overseas nurses seeking registration as a registered nurse, enrolled, or midwife. For registered nurses, you will sit the National Council Licensure Examination for Registered Nurses, or Nclex. The National Council of State Boards of Nursing develops and administers Nclex through Pearson VUE test centers located in most countries. So for registered nurses, you need to sit the Nclex exam. There is no escaping it. You will have to sit it through Pearson VUE test centers. For midwives, you will sit a multiple choice exam managed by the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia, and this will be delivered through Aspect Test Centers. These centers are also in most countries. So if you cannot identify any of these centers, that is Pearson and Aspect in your country, make sure you check the countries that are neighboring in your region and see if these test centers are available. Please note, overseas nurses must be referred by APRA to sit the multiple choice exam. Fees for this exam are set by the providers and paid directly to them at the time of publishing this fact sheet. Registered nurses sitting Nclex exam were paying a registration fee of $200 plus an additional international scheduling fee of $150. So in total, registered nurses were paying Nclex $350. For midwives, the fee is 165 New Zealand dollars plus a possible fee for overseas venues. So this means the fee might change for midwives depending on your region or your location. Cost and location of OSCE. Overseas nurses who have been referred to the outcome-based assessment must pass the multiple choice exam before they can attempt the OSCE. OSCE is managed by Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency and is delivered at the Adelaide Health Simulation Centre in Adelaide, South Australia. The fee for sitting the OSCE is 4,000 Australian dollars. The fee covers APRA's cost in running and maintaining OSCE. APRA and the nursing board are funded only by fees, which must cover all costs of assessing overseas nurses registering in Australia. Question 11. Does Adelaide Health Simulation, the Nursing Board and APRA offer preparatory courses for the OSCE? No. The OSCE preparatory courses are not provided by APRA, the Nursing Board, or Adelaide Health Simulation. Are there still bridging programs available for overseas nurses? I believe they're still there since we're in 2022, but you must hold a referral to do the bridging program. And remember, the referral to do the bridging program does not guarantee a place in the program. It could be fully booked or it could also be discontinued, and that's why they're giving you an option to register for the outcome-based assessment instead. Guys, we've come to the end of this video. I hope this information has covered most of your questions, and if you feel you still have more questions, please put them in the comment section below and I will be in the comments to respond. Kindly consider subscribing to my channel and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.